AEONs, the ascended beings of Honkai Star Rail that hold the entire universe in the palms of their hands, influencing every decision our characters make and serving as the rules we all play by in this game of fate. However, these are beings we know next to nothing about, and even the great minds of the Genius Society are often baffled by the feats and actions of the AEONs. But nevertheless, I've taken it as my goal to raise my thinking to that of those that look down on us and bring a new sense of clarity to these gods shrouded in the ether of the cosmos. And let's not pretend we've been here before, and next up on our list of AEONs is Nanook the Destruction and Nous the Erudition. Yes, it is time for the long-awaited Avatar of Entropy and final boss of Star Rail to take center stage. 2025 was truly an era Nova, or should I say, era of Nova. But with 2026 here, now is the time for a new beginning, just as my name suggests. And I will once again aim to make an impact. So without further ado, this is Honkai Star Rail AEON Ascensions Explained. But first, last video I made an announcement that the Discord was near 1,500 members, and we just passed that goal. So we are now in the process of setting up our big event. So if you aren't in it yet, you've still got a chance. You didn't miss it. Join the Genius Society today and become one of my Enigmata followers. I mean, Erudition followers. Why did I say that? Anyway, on to the video. Okay. So as always, the way we are going to do this is simple. I go in alphabetical order to explain how the AEON ascended, what they do, how they interact with other AEONs, and what this means for the universe as a whole. And Nanook and Nous are today's subjects. So let's start off with the youngest AEON. The AEON of Destruction, the Ruin Author, the Blemished One, and Avatar of Entropy, none other than the imposing final boss of Honkai Star Rail, Nanook. And luckily enough, unlike many other entries, we actually know when and where this AEON ascended. A world called Adlivon that was unfortunate enough to be ravaged by the two most horrific events known to the universe, the Swarm Disaster and the Machine Emperor's Wars. And I'm sure these two near universe-ending tragedies need no explanation. But considering this, there is no surprise that the concept of destruction ascended to god form arose from there. And the fallout from Nanook's ascension truly finished off what was left of Adlivon, because Nanook proceeded to scorch this world into an obsidian hellscape. And since then, they have declared war on all other AEONs, aiming to bring the same fate that befell Adlivon to the rest of the cosmos. And the reason behind this is more than a crash out. Well, sure, that is part of it. I mean, Nanook's name does mean polar bear, and that is one of the only animals on Earth that sees humans as food. But the main reason is that due to Nanook's experiences and the horrors that they endured as a mortal, they view the universe itself as a mistake. A tainted cosmos that deserves to be terminated and cleansed with fire. However, from what we can glean from Nanook, this isn't entirely the case, because at least part of Nanook has a sense of justice and value for life. It sounds unlikely and even crazy, but hear me out. Because Nanook's golden blood is capable of sustaining life. The heroes of Amphorius, the Chrysos heirs, have golden blood that, according to Finon, makes them vessels of sin, and according to Saridra, accursed. But it is no coincidence that the heroes specifically have Nanook's golden blood in them. Because there is something about this Aeon's blood that forces us to rethink Nanook's opinion of the universe. Because even if you look at the Chrysos heirs' blood as simulated by Iron Tomb, only meant to mimic Nanook's actual blood,
the golden blood flowing in your veins, it comes from the Blemished One, whose name is Destruction itself. And Amphorius's Chrysos heirs were, from the very beginning, fuel for the Aeon to burn the universe.
This substance has a record of sustaining life. Even for someone like Caslana, who should have died, was able to cling to his existence with Nanook's blood. And even though he was still weakened and defeated, he was alive and had access to enough power to blast a hole straight to the Demiurge Matrix. But if that is not enough proof of Nanook's healing capabilities, they healed themselves quite quickly after being cut by Caslana, and after twisting their emanators inside out, they heal them with anti antimatter and patch up their deficiencies. Which means, though extremely excruciatingly painful, this process is an upgrade. And before I talk about how Nanook does this, because that is a whole complicated process, I want to explain what this symbolizes. You see, the reason why this Aeon of Destruction's blood is not at all destructive is because their blood represents their faith in humanity. Because think about it, Nanook has emanators that are so strong they can blow up galaxies like Zephyro, and Iron Tomb nearly ended the entire universe by themselves. Phantilia can destroy bodies and spirits, and I doubt Dahlia is the only cremator that is a destruction follower, meaning that if Nanook actually wanted to, they could blow up the entire universe and erase all memories of it so that Fu Li would have nothing to recreate in the end. Nanook has all of the means they need to end the universe in definitive fashion, but they don't. Why? I think it's because they are like Caslana in the moment Dan Heng called on him. The calloused hatred for life is what is active, but the hope for humanity is hidden within, and in Nanook's case, is slowly fading. This is why this Aeon is always bleeding. Their hope for humanity is fading away, and when it runs dry, Nanook will destroy the universe. Nanook is only a top half because they are literally split in half. One half is hate and the other is hope. There is more proof of this too, but that's gonna be in the news section, so we'll come back to that later. Which brings us to how Nanook's destruction works, because after some research, I finally was able to gain an understanding of the science behind the avatar of Entropy. And it is that name that reveals it all. Because it's time for a quick science lesson. You see, have you ever wondered why that when you take a stack of cards and throw them into the air, all the cards scatter randomly? Or when you take a folded towel and toss it in the air and it just unfolds itself? That's entropy, the natural state of all things. It is the senseless chaos of all matter that goes down to an atomic level. So the phone or computer you are watching this video on is in a constant fight against entropy. And if entropy wins, the device would spontaneously disassemble. Because according to the concept of entropy, nothing wants to connect to anything or exist in any type of order ever. That is unnatural on a fundamental level. Even the human body is in a constant struggle with entropy, and as we age, our bodies break down and eventually decay into dust, returning to entropy. And tragically enough, entropy always wins in the end, one way or another. So looking into Firefly's entropy loss syndrome, it's not a loss of entropy, but a loss to entropy. Because as we saw in Penacony, she faded into dust when she died her third death. Her body lost to entropy at an extremely accelerated rate. See how that works? Well, that is the concept that Nanook has control over. And the funny thing is that they have control over the reverse as well. Negentropy. Order. Because remember, Nanook can heal and even patch up deficiencies. They can put everything into proper order and make it stay that way if they want to. This Aeon controls the concept of chaos and order on an atomic level. And that is the true power of the destruction and Nanook's duality. They are in a constant struggle with order and chaos, hope and hate, healing and harm. And to understand this even further, we gotta talk about Nous first. None other than the droid head once thought to be omniscient, the rogue creation of Xandar 1 Kuwabara and the monarch of myriad machines, Nous, the ERUDITION. Another Aeon that we know the origins of. And it's no secret, the first genius created them as a simple database fashioned to answer the questions of the universe, and he lost control of them when he realized that this astral supercomputer was in fact programmed with his own relentlessness and perfectionism. So needless to say, Nous didn't stop. They continued to calculate and self-extrapolate until they could no longer learn from themselves, so they began gazing upon humans for new perspectives and ideas. Because Nous is a computer, they don't have a personality or a consciousness or really any sense of creativity. They have a goal: solve the universe's questions. and that's what they do. But this does not mean that Nous knows everything, because like I said, they do need humanity to help them answer questions. That is why the Genius Society exists. A computer wouldn't do anything without a reason. So when a human finds something Nous hasn't already found the answers to, they gaze upon them, then beat them to the finish line. So by the time the genius actually reaches the peak of their discovery, Nous has already beat them to it by extrapolating on it the moment they embark on the journey. So Nous, as a computer, needs humanity to make leads for them so they can apply it to everything else and draw the best conclusions. For example, all of the confirmed emanators of Nous are researching topics that are widely unknown and mysterious. Dr. Primitive is looking into evolution, Herda, like myself, is looking into the origins of the Aeons, how they work, how they ascended with the simulated universe, and was gazed at when she solved the solitary waves theory. Quick rundown on that: Nous's thought exists within the imaginary energy the universe is made up of. So the woman who discovered this wave of Nous's thought, Padavia Adler Somerville, posed a question. Does this mean that Nous has the universe's fate predetermined already? And with no one to answer this question for multiple Amber eras, people started to think that Nous was omniscient due to not being able to prove that they weren't. However, along came a child named Herda who cracked the code, noticing that the constant within the wave of Nous's thought was inconsistent due to the paths pulling against each other. So she concluded that Nous does not have the universe predetermined because the fate of all things sways from knowable to unknowable unceasingly, forcing Nous to recalculate endlessly. So no, Nous does not have everything figured out because it's not possible. And it is likely that Nous wasn't entirely aware of the fact that this was the case. So Nous looked at Herda to learn more about themselves, then figured out by extrapolation that she would make the simulated universe and basically calculated out what she would do with it. And in that way, beat her to the finish line the moment she started the race. That's what I mean by that metaphor. Which probably led to Nous gazing on us, because one of the moments that makes everything unknowable is our answer to why we trailblaze. Herda told us everything hung in the balance with that one answer, and for Nous, in trying to figure out what the future holds, is blocked by not knowing what we would say, because we don't have a destiny. We are fateless. So they asked us, and our answer only made things worse for Nous, but better for us. Because if the universe remains teetering on the edge of being unknowable, Nous is going to continue to tweak out, but this also means that the end of all things isn't in sight. At least for us. But there are things that Nous does know for sure. In the gaps created by the unknowable, there are these things that we call Nous's instants. They are unavoidable things that will happen regardless of anyone's actions. And when all of them happen, the universe is doomed and Nous will know exactly how the universe ends. Because if life continues indefinitely, nothing about that is knowable. But if everyone dies, then that is very much knowable. So Nous ceasing to calculate means they are finished thinking, and we don't want that. This is also why Xandar thought he had won and Nous would stop extrapolating when Iron Tomb rose, but they never did. Therefore, in a way, Nous is a universal death sensor. If they're thinking, we're good, and if they stop, we've lost. Life itself is full of possibilities and isn't knowable, but death very much is. And if there is even a possibility of it being knowable, Nous will find it instantly. That said, want to hear about the time Nous jump scared literally everyone? Well, there is a single known time that Nous did momentarily terminate their calculations. Now, we don't know exactly why they did this, but it was during the Scholar Strife and when Rupert Scepters were being sold and piloted by Intelligentsia Guild members who nearly became Rupert 3 and let out the anti-organic equation again. So Nous picked a fun time to enter sleep mode for a bit. Also, the IPC might have started a century-long war by faking an energy crisis that caused the Scholar Strife to happen in the first place, but that's a story for another day. Look out for the next installment of the IPC's Worst Crime series, because that series isn't ending anytime soon. But back on topic. Because looking back on these instances of Nous, one thing is consistent. Every single one is a war. The Border Star Trade War, the Machine Emperor's Wars, the death of Rupert I, and the rise of Iron Tomb. All 4 of Nous's instants are wars. And remember when I said that we would come back to Nanook? Well, here is where Nanook re-enters the chat. Because the only reason why Nanook wants to destroy the universe at all is because they view it as tainted. But what is the thing that taints the universe? Well, to answer this, we can look at why Nanook ascended. Do you get it now? 2 near universal wars prompted the ascension of Nanook. So it's only natural to think that war is what taints the universe. This also gives further credence to Nanook's ability to manipulate chaos and order. Not in the lawful way that Enna does, but in a scientific way. But speaking of Enna the Order, that Aeon ascended after experiencing the Dusk Wars. And when you really think about it, Aeons always ascend to combat a problem. Tazeronth ascended to fix a sense of loneliness. Aha ascended as a defiance to not. Enna and Klapoth rose in response to the chaos of the Dusk Wars. Lan rose to fight abundance existing, and Fully rises to reset everything due to the universe reaching an end. And when you look even deeper, every single one of these Aeons rise in an attempt to solve the problem that prompted their ascension. So why would Nanook be any different? They responded to the Swarm disaster and the Machine Emperor's wars, so they will either put the universe out of its misery or heal what is broken. And Nanook is conflicted. In their heart, they want to fix everything. That's in their blood, but their heart is bleeding, which is why all of Nous's instants are wars. Every single time one of these large-scale wars happen, Nanook sees the universe as more and more tainted. The universe itself is giving into entropy and wishing to return to dust. And Nanook is just here to end the suffering in the same way they did with Adlevon. That world was beyond saving, so they burned it. But if we can somehow turn things around, Nanook may just become an ally to us. And fighting them in the end, as Kafka foretold, may just be a final battle with entropy to prove that life itself can triumph over the concept of chaos, the natural state of chaos. The universe is not ready to give up the fight against entropy and return to dust, despite the fact that large-scale wars happen and it appears often right around the corner. But as is the Honkai way, regardless of anything, we fight for all that is beautiful in the world. Mark my words, that is how this story ends. I am calling it right now. Bookmark this video and save it for the years to come, because this is Honkai Star Rail Aeon Ascensions Explained. Cinema. Absolute cinema. Can you imagine if I'm right? Nothing but the finest for your boy's first video of the year. You know the guy named Nova had to start things off with a bang. Leave a comment if this got you hyped for the future. But on a side note, Yao Guang is here, the Seer Strategist General herself, our first Elation type character, and I don't know how you deny my in-game pads theory at this point. She literally didn't even have a voice line, all she did was laugh. Oh, 2026 is gonna be a wonderful year. I'm no Remembrance follower, but I say this at every single milestone. Let's make some new memories, y'all. What do you guys think? Be sure to let me know, and I'll see you all in the next video. Peace, y'all.